In the next part of my talk, I will go on to speak about how our cultural institution has sought to discharge its role to safeguard cultural heritage in this context: diversity, living cultures, intangible cultures, developing country. First, though, I'd like to elaborate further on the concept of intangible cultural heritage, which has been codified by its use in UNESCO's Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, a standard-setting instrument which was adopted by the General Assembly of UNESCO in 2003. The development of the concept of intangible cultural heritage was considered necessary because of the focus of the only other international convention on cultural heritage, the World Heritage Convention, which recognized and lauded monumental built heritage. For those of us without such monuments and without such buildings, it was like the UN was denigrating us and our culture. The World Heritage Convention, which was adopted in 1972, recognized sites of outstanding universal value according to criteria skewed towards monuments and spectacular natural sites. And by the early 2000s, most of these sites were still in Europe. In the whole of the Pacific Island states, there was no World Heritage Site, not counting the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, which has been a World Heritage Site for some time. Some more shots of people in Vanuatu. The definition of intangible cultural heritage in the Convention is, and you can read it up there, the practices, representations, expressions, knowledge, skills, as well as the instruments, objects, artifacts, and cultural spaces associated therewith that communities, groups, and in some cases individuals recognize as part of their cultural heritage. This intangible cultural heritage, transmitted from generation to generation, is constantly recreated by communities and groups in response to their environment, their interaction with nature, and their history, and provides them with a sense of identity and continuity, thus promoting respect for cultural diversity and human creativity. This next bit is the United Nations, I suppose you could say, disclaimer. For the purposes of this convention, consideration will be given solely to such intangible cultural heritage as is compatible with the existing international human rights instruments, as well as with the requirements of mutual respect among communities, groups, and individuals, and of sustainable development. So, intangible cultural heritage is basically what the Pacific Islands deals with when we talk about culture. I'd like to go on to, these are the second and third parts of the definition, and you can see the kinds of, in part 2, some of the domains of intangible cultural heritage. Oral traditions and expressions, including language, as the vehicle of intangible cultural heritage, performing arts, social practices, knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe, traditional craftsmanship. And I'd like to draw note to the use of the new term safeguarding to talk about cultural heritage. Measures aimed at ensuring the viability of the intangible cultural heritage. The use of the new term safeguarding was used in preference to the existing words we used in cultural heritage, which were conservation or preservation, which obviously were not applicable to dynamic, ever-changing living cultures. ICH, constantly recreated by communities and groups in response to their environment, their interaction with nature, and their history. The Pacific Island Museums Association, which some of you may have heard my colleagues talking about in earlier presentations, has a code of ethics which forms the basis of how the organization operates. And I've put it up there for us to see. You can see the importance to the Pacific Island Museums Association of creator communities. In item number 2 there, a primary responsibility to assist communities to maintain and safeguard their continuing intangible heritage. So I'll just leave that up there for you to look at for a bit. So bringing it back down to Vanuatu and the work we've been doing in this area. I want to talk first about the Fieldworkers Program. The Vanuatu Cultural Centre, which is Vanuatu's principal national heritage institution, has developed a program for involving practitioner communities in the management of their own living intangible cultural heritage. The Community Fieldworkers Program is based on the rationale that the culture of the people of Vanuatu demonstrates a strong continuity with their ancestral cultures, And therefore, the most effective way to safeguard and maintain this intangible cultural heritage is to encourage communities to maintain the many aspects of their traditional culture in their day-to-day lives. As the crucial characteristic of intangible cultural heritage is dynamism, its continual recreation by the people that enact it, it is essential that practitioner communities define for themselves what they consider to be aspects of their culture worth safeguarding, and be actively involved in deciding what safeguarding measures to take and how to implement them. The Fieldworkers program was set up in the mid-1970s. People living in local communities have been selected as fieldworkers to represent different cultural groups and receive training in using notebooks, tape recorders, still and video cameras to record cultural information. Basic ethnographic fieldwork techniques such as dictionary making and the recording of genealogies are also learnt, as are the more general aims and methodologies of cultural heritage preservation and development. These people are mostly, because of the low levels of literacy, they're mostly either haven't been to school, formal school, or primary school leavers or early high school leavers.